Rodolivos, where memories become stories. It was autumn when Philippos and Ioanna returned to their beloved village Rodolivos. The afternoon light fell on Grandpa Nikos' house, making it look different, full of the beautiful colors of fall. They had lived an unforgettable summer, full of adventures and exciting discoveries. They met new people, explored enchanting landscapes, danced at the August 15th festival, and listened to stories that felt like old fairy tales. But what impressed them the most was the power of tradition and solidarity among the people of Rodolivos. The stories, the local clubs, the songs, the dances, the smells, the flavors, everything that made the village unique. "Do you remember what we said?" Philippos asked one morning, looking at the autumn leaves falling gently. "Yes," answered Ioanna, "that we will write a book about the history of Rodolivos, so other children can read it too." And so they decided to begin a mission. They put on their jackets, took notebooks and pencils, and went to the Folklore Museum, a beautiful old building full of photos, objects, and scents from the past. There, Mrs. Areti was waiting for them, a sweet grandmother with big glasses and a heart full of stories. "What would you like to learn, my children?" she asked with a smile. "We want to write about Rodolivos," they said together. "And start with tobacco," added Philippos. "We heard that in the past everyone used to grow tobacco." Mrs. Areti smiled. "Oh, tobacco! It was the king of the village." Mrs. Areti began explaining. In the past, the people of Rodolivos loved their land very much. Every spring, they planted tobacco. The plants grew slowly, and people cared for them as if they were little children. "And then?" asked Ioanna, her eyes sparkling. Mrs. Areti continued. "In the summer, they would wake up very early. With tractors and kerosene lamps, known as gazolambes, they went to the fields before the sun came up and it got too hot. They picked the tobacco leaves and placed them carefully in baskets, as if they were precious silks that mustn't wrinkle. When they returned home, they would thread the leaves with big needles, as if making necklaces. This was called burliasma. Neighbors who didn't have work would help the families with burliasma so they could finish quickly and rest. They told stories, laughed, and had mohabetia, meaning beautiful conversations among friends. It was hard work, but they did it with love and joy. Philippos bent down and wrote in his notebook, "Tobacco, a plant that needed care and love just like tradition." "Then," continued Mrs. Areti, "they tied the leaves into long rows, the serikia, and laid them out on metal frames called beds. In older times they used wooden racks. There the leaves dried in the sun and air. The whole village smelled of tobacco, and it wasn't just the harvesting. They had to water the plants, cut their tops, spray them, and remove weeds. They cared for them like babies." When the serikia dried under the sun, the workers tied them into bundles of 5 and made a large kionte. The kiontes were heavy and hard to carry. They looked like giant ropes or snakes made of dried leaves. The villagers lifted them carefully and brought them to storerooms and later to cellars so they could slowly soften. There, they waited through winter for the tobacco work to continue. "Did everyone work?" asked Ioanna. "Everyone, even the children. They didn't have holidays because they helped with the tobacco harvest. In the end, when the crops were sold, they used the money to buy books, clothes, and whatever else the family needed. It was exhausting, but they felt proud." And what happened next? In the winter, the tobacco workers had to process the leaves. This was called pastaliasma. Their first job was to bring the conteves out of the cellars. They chose the ones whose leaves had softened. The leaves shouldn't be dry, otherwise they would break like thin glass. Patiently, they began the pastallasma. They spread the leaves out, matched them by size, and tied them into bundles. It was quiet work that filled winter with the scent of tobacco and the warmth of tradition. All this work brought money, and the village began to grow. At that time, many beautiful neoclassical houses were built. The most impressive of all is the town hall. Incredible, said Philippos. And if you walk today through the village alleys, you might still feel that scent, like a sweet memory that never faded. Ioanna drew a tobacco leaf in her notebook, with the sun above and a child looking at it. Our book will have drawings too, she said, and it will remind all children how important it is to know the history of our place, added Philippos. The children thanked Mrs. Areti for the information she gave them. Thank you so much, said Ioanna. Mrs. Areti hugged them and said, You're two little treasures. Rodolivos is lucky to have you. As they stepped out of the Folklore Museum, the sky had turned golden, just like the dried tobacco leaves. And just like that, their book began, a fairy tale about a village filled with tradition, love, and tobacco. Before the sun fully set, Philippos and Ioanna decided to make one more stop, to Grandpa Nikos' house. Let's go ask Grandpa about tobacco too, said Ioanna. Grandpa Nikos was sitting in his yard, coffee cup in hand, his gaze seeming to look back in time. When they told him why they had come, he smiled and nodded toward the bench, inviting them to sit beside him. I'll tell you a story, he began. When I was a boy, I used to go with my father and carry tobacco with a cart. I remember one year when the crop was destroyed by a sudden hailstorm. The whole village was saddened. They were hard days, but people came together. They gathered in the yards and shared what they had. Bread, cheese, a few tomatoes. They might have had little, but they had each other. They said the tobacco may be gone, but the village is not lost. The children listened closely. Tobacco gave us money, but solidarity kept us standing. Remember this, my children. Whatever you grow, what matters most is to grow love and unity. Philippos wrote in his notebook, Tobacco, a treasure of the land, but the greatest treasure is the people. Ioanna smiled. They now knew their book wouldn't just be about the history of Rodolivos, but also about the values that keep it alive. But the story didn't end there, because as they walked down the village's main street, Ioanna turned and asked, What do you think our next stop should be? Where else can we search? Philippos smiled and pointed to the central square Oche. Maybe there more stories are waiting. And so, with their notebooks full of ideas, they set off for the next exploration, because in Rodolivos every corner has a story to tell. The end, for now.